And good evening, everyone. Carlos Cano here. Yes, your screens do not deceive you. We are here. It is Sunday special. We have obviously an impromptu, I guess not impromptu, but we do have some Monday night football and not of the NFL variety tomorrow night. And so it would actually be going on right when we typically have our pod. And so I said, let's do a Sunday night. Let's talk about all the soccer that's been happening because there's certainly a lot of soccer that happened over the course of the last couple of days. Those of you that woke up very early this morning to watch a game that happened this morning, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And so, welcome to episode 83 of the New York Red Bulls discussion group, the podcast. Again, I'm Carlos Cano. And I'll be joined by Mark Coates in just a couple of moments. So we'll obviously talk about Thursday's match, another edition of the Hudson River Derby. And then, of course, as we know, they'll face the Philly Union. They'll head down the Turnpike into Chester to face the Union tomorrow evening at 7:30. And then we'll also talk about the U.S. women's national team. As I mentioned, game very early this morning, nice and bright and early at 5 a.m. The Red Bulls 2, just literally as we're speaking, I have it playing on my iPad. They just finished up their match versus the Revs 2. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll talk about Gotham, of course. They had a game yesterday and have a game coming up this week. And then, of course, we'll take a look a little bit deeper into tomorrow's game and the upcoming games for Gotham as well as for New York Red Bulls 2. As always, if you miss the live show, the live edition, it will be up on Spotify. Our fearless leader is on vacay. And so it may not be up tomorrow. It'll be up ASAP. But rest assured that it will be up on Spotify. And as always, if you have questions, suggestions, comments, hot takes, aside from sharing them with us in the live thread on YouTube, you're more than welcome to email us at rbdgthepodcast@gmail.com. And so with that being said, we'll again dive into the game from Thursday. We'll dive into the game that happened this morning, another game that just finished up, like I said. And I certainly don't want to do that all by my lonesome. So let me bring in my partner for the day, Mr. Mark Coates. Mark, how are you today, sir?
Good evening. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday indeed. Depending on who you are, some of us are a little bit happier than others. Again, we'll get into that in just a little bit. But let's just get right into it. Let's talk about Thursday. Another edition of the Hudson River Derby. You know, this whole Leagues Cup thing. Again, we were during the last pod that I was on with Gary, he asked me, how do you feel about Leagues Cup? And again, I just don't know. Like, I'm just excited that it's a lot of soccer to watch. Like, I'm just thinking, generally speaking, right? And any given summer, how often do we get to talk about so much soccer simultaneously, right? Between Leagues Cup and Messi and the Women's World Cup and Next Pro and NWSL and all these other things that are happening. And then, as if that's not enough, then you have, of course, all of the major European leagues getting ready, preseason and all that good stuff. But Thursday night, Red Bull Arena, we, of course, bring in our arch nemesis, New York City Football Club. They come into the Cathedral. We pull out a 1-0 victory at the 31st minute. Omir Fernandez from the spot. Luquinhas, a couple seconds prior to that, draws a foul in the box. Fernandez puts it down and nails it, takes a solid penalty. And that's all we needed. We continue to, again, on paper, I know that we all know that they have the star above their crest on their shirt, but at the end of the day, we also do have a little bit of an edge in them with them head to head. Mark, tell us a little bit about what you saw, what you thought in terms of the game on Thursday.
It wasn't pretty. I mean, that was for sure. Watching the first half, I mean, everybody was comparing it to a street fight, and it was pretty amazing watching, the back and forth. I mean, for the first time in a while, we went to a full out press. We were actually in a high press mode, and it obviously rattled them. They weren't ready for it. We had a few good chances. Just prior to the penalty kick being called, Danny Edelman got fouled, and the referee thankfully played advantage at that point. And then he stopped it. Obviously, we get a free kick rather than the PK. But Omir has been a beast against New York City. I can't even count how many goals he has scored against them now. I mean, throughout all competitions, he just seems to love playing against the team from the Bronx. So we came out the second half and gave up a few chances. It wasn't, it was a gritty fight to the end. And thankfully, we got out of there with the win. We advanced. They go home. I thought, honestly, we probably could have scored at least another couple goals in the first half. But again, we don't have clinical finishers. And that's the one thing that's haunted us for quite a while now. Obviously, a lot of people in the discussion group all over Barlow. We'll get to Barlow later. But I just don't. The guy had a terrible game, and I don't think he's going to get fired for it. Even though everybody seems to want to, hand him his walking papers. It's not how it works in MLS. But it was a gritty 1-0 win. And again, we get the win. It's in our home stadium. We show the city fans that, we're the better team. And this tournament's really surprised me. I think when it first got announced, I was like, this is going to be ridiculous. Who's going to want to play this in the summer? And now look at us. We've pulled off, three solid games, gotten ourselves in position. I don't know where we go from here, though. This is going to be a really tough test coming up against Philly. That's for sure.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I think you hit the nail on the head previously. And it's not anything new. It's something that we talk about frequently, of course, is the lack of scoring, right? I think what we always see in any tournament is that once you get out of the group stages, especially, those goals become more and more precious, right? Because they're much more difficult to come by. Teams get a lot tighter in terms of the defense. I think we saw that on Thursday in terms of how the Red Bulls played on defense. Because when City was threatening, I think we definitely anchored down and they made some defensive plays. Cornell, of course, came up big in a couple of different spots there as well. But the goal scoring certainly does become a factor. I mean, again, Omir gets an opportunity from the spot, nails it. But to your point, there were so many opportunities that we could have capitalized on, and it could have very easily been 3-4-0. And unfortunately, some of those opportunities were at Barlow's feet, where he just looked, and I'm so not someone who likes to, kick a guy when they're down. But at some points, to me, he just really looked lost, didn't really look very indecisive on the ball. And I think that ultimately cost him in terms of the opportunities because, at least if you're able to get a shot off, that I think means something. It's not a goal, but it means a little bit of something. But at some points, he just looked really, really out of place. And I just don't know. The question I always bring up to folks in the group is, what's your option, right? Like, where else do you go? I don't think Elias Manuel is that much better than Barlow. So, I mean, I guess you could say, well, give Elias a shot and let him start. But again, it's kind of the same thing, right? Because you start one, the other one's ultimately going to come off the bench. So at some point, you're still going to see them. Mark, what do you think in terms of that? Like, are there other options? Could they do something different up top? Is there something we're not seeing?
I don't really think there's much we can do at this point. I mean, given listen, Morgan being out is really, really, starting to show. Luquinhas has been starting to show up the last couple of games. He's really starting to find that stride that when he first got here, he was amazing, and then everybody was smothering him. He's found a way to get loose and get open and make some moves with the ball, and it's been great to watch. And I'm just, like I said, I'm looking. We still just don't have that option up top. Dante had a great game the previous game. He wasn't as good. And, it's tough because even like for our midfielders, when you watch Frankie Amaya, how many times have we said Frankie Amaya puts the ball over the bar? I mean, I like him. I watched him play it too. I've watched him come up. He can have some really good games. And then he just, in that final moment, he just always seems to be able. He had the one game where he got the 2 goals. Yes, both of them were slight deflections. But put him on frame, things do happen. But that means on frame, not 12 rows back. And that's it's difficult sometimes as fans when we're watching these guys, hitting and stuff. It's just where do we see them? Somebody's got to step up and start taking that other role. I think Barlow has done the best he can, given the situation, and we need somebody who will work with Van Zier. I don't see Manuel being that choice. Corey Burke is going to be back, but at what point do we see him, start to play, or is he just going to be another super sub? Because honestly, I'd rather just see Barlow work in the last 20, 25 minutes of a game. When we're ahead by 2 goals, let him run like a crazy guy, chase after the ball, pressure the keeper, and that's what he does well. He doesn't do well with the ball at his feet, and it's unfortunate because I think he's a great guy, but at some point in time you have to start wondering, what are our options? We really don't have many. I see the guys down at 2. I don't know that any of these guys really are ready to step up. And we were talking about Kasule, and we said he's not ready. And then 2 days later, he gets named as the MLS Next Pro Player of the Month. Now a lot of his goals have been from the penalty spot. They haven't been goals from the run of play. So I'm sorry. I'm just laughing because the Red Bull 2 are in PKs right now, and I watched Abadeo Smith put one like wide right before, and now this one just went off the crossbar. It's tied up 3-3 right now in PKs, but it's just you wonder who's going to be the guy to come up. Now I've seen Sabufu play. I don't know that he's just not going to be stepping into a starting role on the first team. And we just signed this new kid on loan, and we all know what it takes. It could be weeks, it could be months until he actually puts on a uniform. So in the meantime, what are our options? Well, we tried out Barlow, and you deal with it. I mean, what else are we going to do?
Yeah, I think so. One of our audience members poses this question as we're talking about some of the lineup options and whatnot. Again, so it's 2 things, right? For me, at least, in terms of answering this question, right? We have to remember, given the circumstances right now, you're in the middle of a tournament that you're trying to win. So the question becomes, is this the time where you want to start to experiment, right? And you want to try something drastically different than what you've been doing? Or do you go with what's ultimately gotten you to this point? Because again, they get out of the group. They just beat City, and now they're in this next matchup. So do you kind of stay the course? I think if you're looking at it from a broad level, this could potentially work, in my opinion. But the problem still lies and has always been consistent. And it's one of the things that I think becomes understated because the goals aren't there, is where's the service coming from in the midfield? Because as we've said, so we're blue in the face, we don't have that maestro in the midfield that's going to distribute the ball. We don't have the Sasha Question or the Dax McCarty of years past. So you can answer one question by saying, sure, let's throw Luquinhas and Dante and let's play two up top and see what happens. But the same challenge still lies, is where is service coming from? Who's distributing the ball? Is it Frankie Amaya? I mean, it could be. I don't think that's really his strong suit. You don't have a CCJ anymore. Daniel Edelman. I mean, again, it becomes the question of now you're trying to experiment and do something different. Mark, what do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. I think the problem you run into now is once you start somewhere, you start tinkering, it becomes just a cascading effect. You're going to move this guy here, this guy here. You start playing it like a chess match. It looks good on paper, but does it really work? Does the chemistry exist on the field? And I watched the last few games. And I know that given what we saw on Thursday night, Edelman didn't have his greatest game. Yeah, I just watched it. There were a lot of misses in that game, a lot of saves. It was a pretty. I'm gonna love watching the replay of this one. I just need to get rid of that one screen and open this back up. There we go. All right, but given what we're seeing with our players, you could put anybody you want. It's just where you sacrificing play now, because if you start thinking about, Cam Harper started out as a striker when he was playing in Celtic, and then he was brought over here, and he was sort of, well, let's see if he can play midfield, let's see if he can play right back. It just, you start to bounce him around, and it was interesting because the same thing was true of John Tolkien when he was with two. They started him out, moving him up to the attacking mid, had him as a defensive mid. Eventually, he ended up settling in at left back. And obviously, he's done a really good job. Now, we talked about the defense, and you mentioned it earlier, about our defensive play. When I was watching the game, I mean, Sean Nealis probably had one of his best games wearing a Red Bull uniform. And he earned that armband Thursday night, because he was exactly where he needed to be multiple times. Tolkien was making great run backs, and we just didn't give them much of anything to work with. And I watched, the Cam was doing a good job defensively. The one shot that he took early on, that was one hell of a rip. And he was sort of hoping it was going to go in, but like I said, it's tough. I don't know what people think, that there's a limited supply of bodies on this team right now. And like I said, we don't even know, is Burke going to be able to play 60, 70, 80 minutes? We haven't really seen him. He looks gassed after the first half. And it makes me think back to how Drew Yearwood was 2 years ago. Drew was getting gassed at halftime and couldn't start because his fitness level just wasn't there. And you start running out of options, and having Drew as a 10 is not my choice. And we've seen that. I not that I want to take Omir out of play, but I don't want Omir working as a 10 with a single striker either. We're trying to keep focusing on this 4-2-2-2. And again, you brought up an excellent point. Do we try to fix the formation, where we're putting bodies, when it's already been working pretty well? Our defensive end is working. Our guys just need to find the back of the net. And I think that's going to come. We've seen Dante play better the last month. I think him getting back, and he had the setback earlier in the season. We had to deal with the issues because of his being suspended. But now he's back. He's been playing better. You just sort of have to roll the dice, I think, at this point in the season. And we're all in for this tournament now. I mean, we got through the group. We defeated New York. Now it's, we need to get to Philly and we need to show what we can play. And that's sort of what I'm hoping for tomorrow night.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about personnel and players, and flying under the radar. Of course, the Red Bulls do make two acquisitions, one on defense, one to try and address the striking issue. So we have Juan Mina, who is a defensive player, defensive back, a fullback, um, from Colombia, who is actually the younger brother of Yerry Mina, who is over in Europe, playing club ball and plays for the Colombian national team. And then we have Jorge Cabezas from Colombia as well, who will be joining the squad as a forward. Both young kids, both signed to longer term deals, so they'll be around. There's no word, and we know in typical Red Bull fashion, when some of these internationals sign, we don't see them for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and then when they do show up, they show up, with Red Bull too, and then potentially make their way up to the big clubs. So it'll remain to be seen what kind of effect they'll have, if any, on Leagues Cup, on the season, on the regular season, as that gets back into it in the next couple of weeks. And so we look forward now to tomorrow night's matchup. So tomorrow night, the Red Bulls will head down to Chester. They will play the Philadelphia Union. The Philly Union, of course, coming off of a crazy shootout victory over DC. I remember on Thursday night, I flipped over immediately to watch the end of that game as it went into the PK shootout, knowing that we would play whoever obviously won that matchup. And there was definitely, of course, some excitement and angst, obviously, for those fan bases. But in the end, Philly pulls out the victory, and therefore making us go down to Chester to play them in this next round of the Leagues Cup. And so, Mark, with that being said, how do you feel about this matchup? What do you think the Red Bulls will need to do in order to get the result and be able to move on in the Leagues Cup?
Well, before we get into what they're going to do, I have to say I flipped over as well, and I felt just a really odd situation. I'd love to see us host DC, but I can't root for them. It's like, do I want them to win? If they win, we play them at home. It's like, but do you want, you don't want either team to win, obviously, but it's like,
of course.
But given the choice, I mean, I think we would have rather seen DC, but
yeah, just to get the home game, no doubt.
To get the home game, because I think what we're faced with going down there is going to be, it's a similar situation where we're going to have to basically play the same style, and the same tenacity as far as our defensive play. And we're going to have our guys find a way to get past Burke, because it's going to be one of those situations where we've got to score. And I think if we can score a goal in the first 15 minutes, we set the tone for the game. And that's something, people will say, oh, we also don't play well with the lead. Listen, we don't play well with the lead. We don't play well from behind. We just haven't played well all year in general. But for some reason, this tournament's given our squad some new life. And we've seen, like, the new coach bounces over. So now this is something completely different. It's brand new. It's the first year. And I think a lot of people have started to get behind the team, and we're starting to feel that excitement about being a part of it. And obviously rolling off a win like we did against New York, New York City, excuse me. Going down to Philly, it's not going to be a fun place to go play, but we know what to expect from them. And like I said, I think the bottom line for us is going to be a continuation of our defensive stability. We need our guys to keep playing that same level. And as long as we can do that, I think we got something going. Does Gary have anything better to do with his vacation time?
No. That's actually
Oh,
me. That's actually me. Gary
I
actually.
thought that I was like, oh no.
So let's pull the curtain back a little bit on
Yeah,
our
yeah.
episode. So usually what happens is even when I'm driving the ship, the proverbial ship that is our podcast, Gary usually hangs out and lurks in the background on StreamYard, which he did for probably the first 10 minutes. Figured Mark hasn't dropped any F-bombs. I'm still, I still haven't clicked end broadcast or anything like that. So I think he left. He's like, I think these guys got it. And so because he left, now then I take the liberty to put up comments and banners and fun stuff like that. So no, that's all me. Gary's on vacation now. Hopefully he's just watching on YouTube and not and doesn't come back into the StreamYard. But just for the viewing and listening audience, we pull back the curtain every now and then and give you guys some of the tips of the trade, if you will.
Listen, I even have a broadcast button tonight. I don't know why.
Yeah, look, again, that's how you know Gary's really on vacation, because he just said, you know what? Let's give the go live and end broadcast button to Mark and Carlos.
Well, I guess that's in
let
case
them figure
God
it
forbid
out.
something happened when you couldn't, and I'd be doing this solo, because we can't say we're going to be on and then not show up, right?
Well, that's
live since day one.
We can't disappoint our fans. That would be terrible.
I don't like this graphic. You can take that back down.
But yeah, I mean, look, as I said earlier, as these tournaments go on, and I think this of every and any major tournament, right? On Champions League, anywhere, the World Cup, Confederations, Copa America, any of the major tournaments, it's always the same, right? You kind of start, big and bold, and then as you get deeper into the tournament, defenses start to tighten up. Your tactics start to become a little bit more conservative, and those goals become more difficult to get, and therefore become more precious when you do get them. And so, my thought is, if the Red Bulls come out and play defense like they did on Thursday, that's going to be fantastic. Like, that's going to keep the Union at bay. It's going to be a lock. The key to this game, and it's easier said than done, is going to be to score. So here's the thing. It's interesting you mentioned, Mark, having them score early. And I think if it was any other team, I would agree with you. The problem for me is that we know that this team does not park the bus well. And for the life of me, I can't figure it out. So on Thursday, as we're getting towards the end of the game, you would think I'm getting more and more relaxed because the game is close to being done and we have a 1-0 advantage. And I'm getting more and more anxious because I'm seeing them park the bus and they're still getting through. I mean, if you think about it, some of the better chances that City had came in the second half and probably in the last 15 to 20 minutes of play. And I'm literally sitting there like this, like wanting to rip my fingernails, bite my fingernails, because I'm like literally I'm waiting to type "That's so Metro" in the thread, in the game thread, because I felt like it was going to happen.
You probably had it typed and you were waiting to hit send.
Yeah, I mean,
it was like we're all thinking it. That's the problem. It's like we know what's inevitable. We tend to try to park the bus and it doesn't work because we don't know how to park the bus. And especially when the last subs were made, my heart was like, oh no. Like, why are you making? I'm like, no, don't. I'm like, no. And I'm like thinking, this is not, because we know now, and obviously with this format, we're going to go to penalties. But I think I don't even remember if it's just direct penalties after 90 or if that's just in the group stage. I don't know if they do the extra time in the knockout round, because that I didn't even read. I didn't even think about it. But it was one of those moments where, the last 20 minutes of that game, City got several chances, good chances, and Cardinal really wasn't asked to make too many saves in that. But you can't rely on your defense to run at that speed, especially into the game. That's when mistakes get made. I mean, a perfect example, watching Red Bull 2. They scored their equalizing goal with probably less than 30 seconds left in the match. It happens. It happens more often than not. We've seen teams score a goal late in the game. So holding on to a 1-0 lead, it's not something that I don't think any of us want to see our team go through. And there's no guarantee, obviously, that we would get a second goal. My reason for saying I'd like to see us score in the first 15 minutes, it's obviously to give our team some confidence, and it also takes the crowd out. Because if they see us score, let's say 10, 12, 15th minute, they're not as noisy. So you don't have that other distraction as the opposing, the visiting team. That's more why I would want us to score early, not so we can park the bus. Even if we had a 3-0 lead, and we've seen what's happened in Philly. We saw the graphic you threw up. We've seen leads disappear in Chester. Playoffs, regular season, we just don't seem to have the answer to this team. And it's happened in our house. So scoring first and having a lead doesn't guarantee you that we're going to end up with the win. But this is, like you said, it's sort of, it's mid-season playoff mode. So we've got to be all in, and we've got to be in go mode. Somebody on this team has to score. And that's going to be the thing that we're going to all be watching for Monday. And, I don't know what else we could hope for. It's one of those things where the season isn't going where we wanted it to go. I don't know how much really we're going to see as far as a difference maker coming out of any of these signings. I mean, they're sort of, like you said, under the radar kind of signings. I don't know that either of these guys are going to make a huge difference. I think we have what we have. We may add a couple of guys from Red Bull 2, but this is it. This is the team we've got to go forward with, and we're going to have to hope for the best. So the tournament gives us the opportunity to shoot for something. We were talking about, I think there's somebody mentioning it earlier, looking forward to, what if we get past Philly? Let's just get past Philly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's to me is the most, we don't know what's going to happen beyond this, but we need to get through this game tomorrow.
For sure. And just to confirm, and for everyone listening and watching, the rule for overtime is the same during the knockout stage of Leagues Cup. So after 90, if it's tied, they go straight into a penalty kick shootout. So that is the constant for this particular tournament. Which again, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I think it's similar feeling though to how I think most people feel, generally speaking, about penalty kick shootouts. I think you feel great about it when you come out on the winning side. And when you don't, you think it's the worst thing ever. I do like the idea of golden goal. I wish we did that instead. I think I'm a fan of doing the extra two 15-minute halves in overtime, but have it be golden goal, right? So whoever scores first, that's it. I think that creates a little more drama, a little more excitement. And then again, ultimately, if you still have a draw after that extra 30 minutes, then you go into the shootout.
Yeah, I think that may be something that they thought about based on the fact that these games are only 3 or 4 days apart. So
right.
if you go the distance and you got to play an extra 30 minutes, it's similar to, and again, the whole, like in hockey, in the playoffs, you do have the sudden death goal, right? That you don't play the full 20-minute period. But that becomes an issue too, because if you're already playing 90 and then you're going to play another game in 3 days or 4 days, if you got to play 120 minutes and go through a shootout, and then you do it again, let's say 3 days later, your squad's going to be exhausted.
Yeah.
No,
so that's absolutely right.
That's probably something they took into account. I like you. I would prefer to see the 2 15 minutes. And then, yeah, if they were to choose a golden goal versus just going straight to PKs, if nobody scores. But again, like I said, I think that's if you had a week apart between games, maybe that's something that they took into account. I don't know that you want to see any team, your team, going and constantly playing extra time. By the time you get to the final, you guys are going to be pretty much spent. Especially,
Right.
it's the middle of summer. You're playing in a lot of venues. Obviously outdoor. We're not playing any of these in dome stadiums. It's hot. It could be raining. It could be miserable. Do you really want to have your guys out there hustling for that long?
Yeah, and I think the other piece too is that particularly for those for the MLS clubs, you're going, and granted, right, if you've been bounced out from the group stage, then you're getting ready for the season to restart. But if you happen to be one of the teams that makes it to the later phases of the tournament, and you're going through that, where you're playing 90, then 120, and then a shootout, you go back into the regular season, and now your team is pretty darn shot from the tournament. So then it kind of creates that catch-22 with the tournament, and you want people to kind of embrace this Leagues Cup down the line and make it something a little more significant. But time will tell. Again, I think for those games that have gone directly into the shootout, I think it's made for a good good vibe, right? Because it's different. It's something different. And I think for those soccer fans, whether you're the more diehard or even just a more casual fan, it's a little bit of excitement. And the next round continues, kicks off tonight, 9:30. Miami and Messi Mania are in Dallas to play FC Dallas. So that match is on Apple TV Plus at 9:30. And so what we're going to do here real quick is we're going to shift gears. We're going to take a quick 30-second break, and then we're going to shift gears and talk about the matinee, the 5 a.m. I was up at 4:45. I set my coffee on a delayed brew, and it was waiting for me when I came downstairs to watch the game. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the U.S. women, the rest of the Women's World Cup, and as well as Gotham and Red Bull 2 and all that good stuff. And we'll talk about that on the other side. We'll be back in 30 seconds. And here we are back on the New York Red Bulls discussion group, the podcast. And so this morning, some of us may have gotten our day started before the sun came up. I know I did set my alarm. I'm a big wrestling fan, so I was up late last night watching SummerSlam. That finished around midnight, give or take. And I was up at 4:45 for a 5 a.m. Kickoff for the U.S. women's national team. They played Sweden in the first phase of the knockout round after getting out of the group. As I think many saw and read and heard, with some criticism, particularly from some previous players with regards to their performance or lack thereof in the group stage. They did get out, however, and drew Sweden and played this morning. And look, long story short, I mean, we're not going to necessarily run through it minute by minute, but what it did come down to was literally a millimeter. And for those of you that didn't catch the game this morning, so the game goes into overtime. They're at 0. They go through overtime still at 0-0. They go into a penalty shootout. super dramatic, of course. There's no other way to do it in a tournament so big. And the last shot, Alyssa Naher makes the save, or basically makes a half or a quarter of a save, however you want to look at it. And good old goal line technology showed that it was a goal. I was listening to the Caught Offside podcast, which is a great listen if you're into soccer podcasts with Andrew Gunling and JJ Devaney. And Andrew had said, which is something that I did too, was you literally had to get up and really just have your nose right on the television to be able to see that the ball was on the goal line, because if you're looking at it like most of us did, you're like, wait, like how, like where? But that's what the technology is for. And like I said this morning, I think I posted it on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I said technology is great until it's not, because that's exactly
until it stabs you through the heart.
Until it stabs you right through the heart and into your gut.
We can
rough.
Listen, I'm sure that there's plenty of people that want to say, blame technology, and we didn't need to get to that point. And I think we could do a whole review on what went wrong during just that match. Look, the women's team showed up and played like I thought they should have been playing since the minute they hit the turf against Vietnam. They played a good game. I will take nothing away from the Swedish team, and I'll take nothing away from their keeper. She was short, and nothing short of amazing. Okay? Like I think Gary had said it to us earlier during the day when we were having a conversation. The woman, she was a brick wall. Nothing was getting through her today. And it showed. And here's sort of some of the things that as I've stewed about this during the course of the day, because like you, I was up early this morning, brewing my coffee. I have a Keurig though, so I didn't have to set it. I just go pop it in and stuff. But from 5 o'clock this morning watching this, and then at just a little after 8 a.m. to watch this go down and see them review the play and go, did I just waste 3 hours of my morning? Because that's basically what it started to feel like. They played well during the course of this game. Had they played this well in the other two games in the group stage, they would have faced South Africa instead of Sweden. All right, Sweden's got a great team. All right, but you look at what took place in the penalty kicks. I mean, Megan Rapinoe's shot was miserable. I mean, that was just an absolutely miserable shot. She did not look good at any point in time when she was playing. And a lot of people had said that they were surprised by the lack of participation from some of the other players on this team, and the question the coach about whether he felt confident enough in some of these other younger players to come in and fill the role. And you could use excuses. All right, we had a major injury. Our captain went out. Everybody's faced with injuries. Everybody has to overcome this. All right. Alex Morgan did not look like Alex Morgan from 4 years ago. It just obviously, and it showed. And I think the bottom line is now we have less than a year to get ready for the Olympics now with this team. And now we have more questions than we have answers. Getting bounced in a round of 16 was not a good look for this team. And I think our fan base and our country is going to question what is this team going to do next year? Who are the bodies you're going to bring in? Because you need to have veteran leadership. We talk about it even with our squad. You need to have veteran leadership, but you also need younger players to gain experience. You watch what happened with the men's team, and whether people like Berhalter or not, he has gotten a lot of mileage out of all the different players that they've brought into camp. And he substituted guys in, and he got guys minutes, and you start to count up some of those minutes that you get. You can't replace that with practice time. When you're playing against an international opponent, and you're playing at that on that kind of a stage, it gives you the confidence to be able to come in off the bench and play up to your level of ability. And if you're not going to have these women get up off the bench and put them into a game, why does he takes Alex out and he puts Megan Rapinoe in? You know, it was just, that was like when I saw that, and I'm like, this is not going to end well. That was the first thought I had. This isn't, you know, there's like I said, there's so many questions that this now opens up, and we have basically less than a year to start some answers.
It's tough, you know. I mean, look, Megan Rapinoe is an icon of the sport, an icon of women's soccer on every level. There's no question about it. But she looked like a shell of herself. In particularly today, you know, whether, I mean, again, and I'm nitpicking, but you know, some of the set pieces that she was over the ball on, I mean, she couldn't even get them into the box. Like, that was rough to watch. And then the penalty kick that she took, also just like a punch in the gut. You know, it's interesting you mentioned that, Mark, with regards to the injuries and the roster that ultimately ended up going to Australia and New Zealand for this World Cup. And hindsight's 2020, but you know, if some of those injuries don't happen prior to the tournament, does Rapinoe even make the roster? So are we even having this conversation, right? So obviously we know Rapinoe's retiring. So she's done in terms of international play. So this was her last World Cup. Alex Morgan, after the game, was interviewed. She was devastated, you know, visually, verbally so. But she indicated that she has no intentions of hanging up her boots anytime soon. So, you know, there's that piece. To me, you know, ultimately, and there's a question I want to put out to the audience to discuss too. But for me, this team was way too talented for the tactics that the coach employed during this tournament. And so for me, and it's very rare because I've always been of the mind players play, right? And so most of the time, I think the brunt of the blame, if you will, falls on players typically. In this case, however, because this team is just so talented, and some of the moves that were made by the coach, or lack thereof for that matter, like substitutions, like what are you saving substitutions for the next game? Like, there's no tomorrow. Like, use your subs. And then the subs that are made, you know, again, super questionable. But so that's my take on it. I mean, to me, I think the coach needs to go. Again, I think this team is too good. The talent is too good for some of this more conservative type of play that I think this coach wants to employ during the matches. So, but I pose this question because this is kind of where I've been marinating since the result this morning and seeing some of the other teams in the tournament so far. So is the women's national team being bounced out a product of their poor play, or is it the international stage becoming more competitive and bridging the gap? Because we know 4, 6, 8 years ago, the U.S. women's national team was here and the rest of the world was down here. You can't even see my hand. Like, that's where they were. And now it just doesn't seem to me, it doesn't seem to be that way anymore. One of my major critiques going into the tournament was everyone was saying the U.S. have to win. The U.S. should win. And while, again, as a fan, that's what I wanted, the soccer person in me was like, could they win? Of course, absolutely. Should they win? I don't think that's the case anymore. And to me, my take is on this particular question is I think that the international stage has gotten better. And that's why I think ultimately we're having this conversation today. Because to your point, Mark, it isn't about making excuses. It isn't about blaming technology, the goal line, or anything like that. But I think at the end of the day, the gap has certainly closed between the U.S. the U.S. soccer team, the U.S. women's national team, and the rest of the field.
I think it's a combination of both. But the excuse me, I think the competition has gotten better. During the week, I happened to catch the game that Japan won against Norway, and the one goal that I was watching, I think it was the second goal scored. It was just really, really crisp passing, build up from the back. They got the ball really, really wide, spread out the Norwegian defense, and it was just a beautiful cross in. And you watch this and like, that's tactical soccer. This is like textbook. This is how you teach it. And I'm thinking they're catching up. All these other teams are starting to catch up. They've seen what we've done. They watched the film, and they're getting it done. The other half of the coin is no, we were not. It wasn't. I won't say poor play so much as I think it was just it was a poor effort. And how many times have we seen? It's just you're clearing the ball from the back. You're trying to get it up to your forwards. There's no build up through the middle. There's no build up in the back. And we both have stressed so many times. Games are won and lost in the midfield. And the U.S. women's team did not have much of a midfield that played cohesively. They could not string passes together. Is that a question of the players not getting it done? Or was it that the coach wasn't giving them the opportunities and, the tactics that we were employing during the course of this tournament? We watched Vietnam lose 3-0. It should have been 7, 8, 9. Not that we want to add on or tack on goals, but at the same time, we should have been really killing them on the field. And it didn't happen. And that was the first indication to me that this is not going to go well for this tournament. If this is, Carly Lloyd came out and made her comments, and people jumped all over her. And I said, wait, this woman's won how many different trophies? How, what it all, look at what she has every right to say what she feels. And she wasn't wrong. That's, you don't want it. It's like that situation. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Which would you rather be? And I think in that situation, I think Carly would have been overjoyed to have the team go out and prove her wrong. Unfortunately, They proved her right.
So. I think so. And, just putting out the question to everybody, we have Vacationing Gary, who reminds us, look, that's always going to be, part of the, the challenge, right? We know that the Olympics are next year. And so is this the right time to fire a coach and bring in somebody new? Probably not. But it's pretty obvious to me that if he doesn't go now, which is probably the way to go for any number of reasons, that leash is going to be short. Because if they don't go to Paris and perform and win the gold, I mean, let's be honest. To me, at this point, if they don't win the gold at the Olympics and they fall short of that, I think it's definitely time to go.
No, I think Gary's right in that. I think it's one of those situations where you don't have enough time to have a new coach come in, and I know that we both saw the article where it talked about, do we take the step backwards and bring in one of the former coaches to step back in and take over, even on let's say on an interim basis, just to get us through the Olympics. But is that really what you want your program to do?
Right.
And I think that was the men's team was faced with a similar situation too this year with the Berhalter's contract being up. Obviously, there was a lot of distractions from a lot of the nonsense that went on outside of soccer with Berhalter. And it was a it was a difficult spot, and I think that U.S. Soccer decided to allow his contract to expire, and then had the interim coach for the Gold Cup, and going through all of this, and now bringing Berhalter back. There's obviously the team wanted him back. I think the men's team were very comfortable with him. I don't know that Berhalter is going to get us to a World Cup victory, come 2026. I just don't know that that's going to be something we're going to see with him. Maybe we get close, and maybe close is decent for us. We obviously haven't had the best track record in the World Cup. So if we make it to the Final Four, does that solidify Berhalter's position? It's a tough call. I think the men's situation is a little bit better right now than the women's. This just exposed such a mess. When you look at all the stuff that they've gone through in the last 2 years, between the lawsuit over equal pay, when all of the stories came to light about their treatment, and some of the things that were going on, obviously with certain management personnel, coaches, and how these women players were treated. It's a horrible story. I'm glad that it's coming to light. Then action was taken. Now the question becomes, how do they sort all of this out? And now with being bounced out in the first round, what do you do? I don't know that firing the coach is the answer, but it may not be a bad choice at this point. It's a tough call.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm left with that gives me a little bit of comfort, as we mentioned, obviously Megan Rapinoe announced prior to the tournament that this was the last one for her. Post game, Julie Ertz came out and said she is retiring from international play. But what I'm left in terms of comfort is that the rising stars of this team, who we know again are just super duper talented, are super young. So I think that what we would have liked to see in this tournament is, which we didn't get to see for any number of reasons, but we didn't get to see that breakout star, right? Like I think many folks thought that someone like an Alyssa Thompson or Sophia Smith or Trinity Rodman were going to break out and say, "I'm here. I'm gonna be the one to lead the next generation of this team into the Olympics next year and into the next World Cup," and that didn't happen. But at the end of the day, again, players like that, players like Rose Lavelle, who still has another couple of years under her belt, most likely another World Cup to come back to. Naomi Girma on defense, who I thought was great, probably one of the brighter spots to me on the U.S. team. And so, again, I think the talent is there. They just need to figure out the tactics, because Gary made a great point in the thread. The U.S., particularly the U.S. women's team, they had also always, not only were they good tactically, but they've always been good athletes. And so when they would go out there, they would play you in terms of the X's and O's, because they were that much better tactically, but they're also just great athletes. And now, again, the international stage has bridged that gap. And so now the U.S. has to take, I think, their tactics to the next level, because, again, I think the talent is there, but now they have to change the tactics, come at it from a different approach, so that they can be the dominant team that I think they have the opportunity to be. But listen, make no mistake, again, if you're a soccer fan, there's plenty of great women's soccer to be had in the rest of this tournament. I know I'll continue to watch it. But today was a gut blow. There's no question about it for the U.S. women. It'll sting for a bit, but, like we just said, it'll definitely take some short memory because the Olympics in Paris next year will be here before we know it, and that team will need to be ready to show itself. So in the last couple of minutes, folks, New York Red Bull 2. So literally, as we're going into the podcast, I flipped my iPad off because I'm like, oh, this game's over. They're going to lose. Clearly not the case because they come back in stoppage time. They tie the game up. They go into a penalty shootout and they win.
I had my split screen going on, so I watched and I saw Avante Mullings scored the equalizing goal, probably, like I said, with less than 30 seconds remaining. The thing that it was interesting, of course, is that Jordan Abadeo-Smith scored the goal for New England too. Last year, he was on loan from the Tampa Bay Rowdies in USL up to Red Bull 2, and Jake LaCava was actually loaned out to Tampa Bay, sort of almost like we traded. But over the winter, they felt that Abadeo-Smith was not worth retaining, so he was let go and he was picked up by New England. So he was one of the ones that missed his PK, and it was actually a very, just even watching it, like, that had to be one of the worst penalty kick shootouts I've seen in a while. There were more misses than there were goals. So listen, they get the 2 points on the road. They come home. I believe they're home Wednesday. I'd have to double check, but I believe they have a game Wednesday. I think it's against City 2 that they're playing, or is it Toronto 2? They're playing against Toronto FC 2, 7 p.m. on Wednesday. So they're still, I think, in fourth place now. I'd have to double check their standings in the.
They're in fourth place. 10, 5, and 6.
So, for those that it's a love-hate situation. I know my wife rarely likes any of my comments in the discussion group because she tries not to show any bias towards me. But I made the comment earlier in the weekend that ever since the move from USL to Next Pro, it's really soured a lot of us because you're basically having these kids play against kids. They're not getting the same level of play that they were experiencing against USL. And while only watching one victory last year at home, which happened to be on my birthday last year, which was kind of nice, but to only have one home win for an entire season, it's rough. It's rough to keep going out there, but we're there to support the young guys coming up. To think of all the guys that I have seen walk past me, shaking hands with these kids on the field, and to see where some of them have gone, beating Tyler Adams, and as far as some of the newer guys, to have seen Daddy Allen play last year, knowing that he was going to come up. I have a picture of, as I call him, Eminem, but JMI was 16 years old, and it was his birthday. He came and stood next to my 11-year-olds. And I have a picture of him standing up with us on the sidewalk just outside of the little concession area after the game. And I'm just looking at this, thinking he's 16, that my kids are 11. My kids aren't that much younger than he is. And he's out here scoring a goal and playing well. And it's a lot of fun to watch these guys. I wish we were playing back in USL, but this was not obviously the decision that was made. But it's still been interesting watching this team, and they've played as a good unit. And we were talking earlier about some of the guys that could possibly come up. And I think Sabufu is going to be one to watch. And Avante Mullings has been making some real noise playing as a midfielder because he had been playing as a defender. And the latter half of this season, they moved him up to midfield. And it's been interesting to watch him play, and obviously for him to score the equalizer tonight. So we'll see what happens the next month or two if some of these guys do get moved up to the first team. It's going to be interesting to watch to see, like I said, who they choose to pull up.
Yeah, for sure. And then last but certainly not least, New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC. They're currently in the NWSL Challenge Cup. So they played yesterday. They beat the North Carolina Courage 2-0 in that matchup. Have a great game. They've been playing really well. They're in third place in the league. They're currently sitting in second place in this in the Challenge Cup. They have a game coming up now on Wednesday versus Orlando. They're at home, and so if you are out and about, that game is at Red Bull Arena coming up, and so
That's a
definitely
tough one. Both 2 and Gotham are playing 7:30 Wednesday.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a tough one. I'd wanted to get tickets for yesterday's game. My wife and I were thinking of actually just going, the two of us, to go watch, because I've wanted to go see one of their games because I haven't had a chance to watch them live yet. But unfortunately, we had work issues come up for the both of us, so we weren't able to go. But I enjoyed watching a couple of the games that have been on. One of the things that I think we're going to have to discuss at some point is how many streaming services do you need to own? Because I do not have Peacock. So therefore, I don't get to watch unless they happen to be on, regular broadcast TV, if they happen to be on, if NBC chooses to put them on, or if they happen to be on MSG. So
yeah, the NWSL, that's a Paramount Plus vehicle. So they're there, but I completely hear where you're coming from, Mark. I mean, what at this point, I have them all there. I've got Paramount Plus, I've got Peacock, I've got Hulu and Netflix and the ESPN Plus and all that fun stuff. At the end of the day, it's because I want to watch it, so I get them, but I completely understand the point. I mean, the Apple TV Plus. I mean, if I wasn't a season ticket holder for the Red Bulls, having gotten it, do I get it? Do I make the investment? I don't know. I guess I'll never have to find out as long as I'm a season ticket holder. But I'm on the same boat. I need to get out and watch Gotham. They actually play on Wednesday, and so now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, thinking of my day on Wednesday. I'm like, maybe I can make my way there that afternoon and get to catch them, because I've been meaning to do that for some time too. And again, sometimes the schedule just doesn't work out. But definitely want to show them the support. I think they obviously deserve it, more beyond words could say. And again, it's just more soccer to watch for me. So that's just super exciting for me. So I think we lost Mark on the visual, but he's still there. But I'm here too. But I mean, that's really it for tonight, guys. We covered a lot in terms of soccer in the last couple of days. The Red Bulls Thursday with their victory over our arch rival, and they will be in action tomorrow night, 7:30 kickoff, Apple TV Plus. They'll be down in Chester. I know that there are a number of folks who will be traveling with the team. I know several folks have been inquiring, I'm going down, where do I park? How do I do this? How do I do that? So hopefully our friends out in the discussion group will point you in the right direction for that. But of course, we will not have a podcast tomorrow night. That's why we're here tonight, so that everyone can be on and ready and engaged to support the boys tomorrow night. The U.S. women, of course, as we discussed, they have been eliminated from the FIFA Women's World Cup in a penalty shootout this morning. So time will tell where the team goes from here in preparation for the Olympics. And then, of course, Red Bull New York 2 with a victory late, the equalizer late in regulation, and then the penalty shootout victory. And then, of course, the Gotham girls with a victory yesterday, and we'll play Orlando on Wednesday at Red Bull Arena. That you can watch on Paramount Plus. But again, summertime, if you've got the time, take the trip out and support those ladies. So,
sorry about
Mark,
that.
no worries, Mark. Mark, super quick before we head on out of here. Prediction for tomorrow evening. What goes down for the Red Bulls?
I want to avoid saying the word PK. I don't like that word. I don't want to go there. I'm going to say we pull this one out 2-1.
2-1. And I believe, because I don't have anything else to go by other than what we see. The proof is in the pudding, right? I think that this team defensively will show up once again, and they will get that shutout in regulation, but I don't see where the goal comes from. And so I think that they take this. I think they win. I believe they will win, but it'll be in a dramatic penalty shootout. But I think we get the best of Philly, mostly because they have gotten the best of us at every other turn, and I think it's time to turn the page and to get the better of them. And I think we do it here, because why not? And since when does this team make it easy to win a game? So
it wasn't easy Thursday.
It certainly wasn't, but we pulled it off.
Yes, we did.
But let's be honest. I mean, again, if we're being a little more analytical, I think Philly is better than City this season, and so I think they'll be able to also, meet us in terms of keeping the scoreboard at 0. And then they'll just have to beat us in a shootout. They'll have to test the beard in a penalty shootout, and we'll have to test Andre Blake and see who the better of the two is. I think that's what it's going to come down to.
I like I said, that's what I'm dreading. That's why I'm hoping we win 2-1.
Hey, from this podcast to the soccer god's ears, my friend, if we pull off that 2-1 victory, it'll be pretty darn sweet, and it'll make for a great trip back home for the supporters that take the trip down to Chester. It'll make for a pretty fun ride back up the turnpike.
Sure.
So guys, that'll be a wrap.
Did you see what Gary wrote? I'm calling him out, man.
What did Gary write?
1-1, but we lose in PKs.
Gary, go back on vacation. Get out of here.
No faith in our squad.
Listen, and this is just for the viewing public. This is Gary Redmond, ladies and gentlemen. He sits in the press box and granted, he's supposed to be unbiased because he's a member of the media, blah, blah, blah. But here he is today on vacation as a fan, and he says we're going to lose. I mean, then people wonder why I use the hashtag blame Gary, ban Gary. No, let me stop before he doesn't set up our podcast for us to do anymore.
Where he finds the stop broadcasting button somewhere down there.
Yeah, he might cut it short. He might actually come back in now into the room and then cut it short because we're talking smack about him.
Listen, you see that little banner hanging up behind my head there? It says 96, right? After all these years, he's gonna sit there and say we're gonna lose in PKs to these guys.
This is terrible.
Listen,
this isn't a word trouble.
Where's your faith in our squad?
Yeah. Listen,
I don't think a lot of us have faith, actually. That was that whole, like I said, there was that part of me that said, all right, if we face DC, we have a better shot at moving through. But I don't think that gives us the opportunity moving beyond that. If we get through DC, they happen to get lucky and win in PKs, I think we're probably going to face a much better test against Philly than we would have against DC. And should we manage to get through Philly, I think this squad starts to build some momentum and starts to have some belief in themselves. It's just, well, I'm glad he added that. I was going to say that you, us, we're all, I hope you're wrong too. I'd like to think I'm right. But listen, at the end of the day, we're not going to know until they take the field. And I think I don't think we mentioned it. The game is at 7:30 tomorrow, not 8 o'clock. I know that they had said initially, I think, that the East Coast games were supposed to be 8 o'clock starts. There you go. There it is. we all know that's what we do here.
Ladies and gentlemen, if Gary's, I don't know if their dreams or nightmares come true. This is the way to go. Blame Gary.
That's it. We always blame Gary. It always works for us. Well, we can't blame him today. He set everything up for us.
We cannot. And so with
Gary.
that, folks, we will put a bow on tonight. We do want to thank Gary. We love Gary because we said we want to do the podcast on Sunday. We had a game Thursday. We have a game tomorrow. We have to do the podcast today. And he said, okay, I will set it up and you guys can drive the ship.
Like we were talking about this morning. I mean, you think about all the games that took place between Thursday, Saturday, and even today. That was a lot of soccer to talk about in just a matter of 3 days.
There definitely was.
I couldn't have waited until next week.
Yeah, definitely not. And I think, if I remember correctly, there will be a podcast, not tomorrow, but next Monday, with Gary, with Miguel, with Lanray, and who knows who else we get.
I think he has a guest coming on.
I think Anthony's coming on.
I think Anthony's coming on as a guest. Yes.
Yeah. So, in any case, folks, thank you all so much for joining us and on this special Sunday edition of the podcast. The rest of the guys will be back next week. Gary's on vacation, but huge kudos to Gary. We bust his chops, but we love him, despite his ridiculous predictions. But anywho, Mark Coates, thank you so much.
Carlos, lovely as always to spend an evening with you, sir.
You got it. And to those watching, thanks for joining us. For those who are listening on Spotify, thank you for listening. And we will talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.
I think we smoked that one, baby.